Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art and culture, and this is Billboard Breakdown. You know, it's rare that I get to be surprised much when it comes to these charts anymore. I mean, sure, you get your weird stuff that will show up every single week, but 17 weeks into Billboard Breakdown, looking at the Hot 100, it takes a lot to really pique more interest from me. This week, however, well, I'm not going to really say that I was surprised by everything that happened on the charts, but more than a few times, I was just perturbed enough to wonder if things are just slightly out of the ordinary this week. Granted, going into next week, given what I've heard about some streaming data, I've got a good idea what's coming up, and it's going to be awesome. But it's always kind of nice, always kind of pleasant to be thrown off guard a little bit, to keep me on my toes. You want an example of that? Let's start with our top 10, where things are actually pretty busy this week. Well, okay, not at the top. Uptown Funk by Mark Ronson and Bruno Mars still holds up despite some slipping airplay, sales, and streaming, but it's really because it's had such a massive lead to start that it's held onto the top. But we do have a new number 2 with Sugar by Maroon 5, and I can barely muster the enthusiasm to continue the sentence. Truth be told, the rise of Sugar is mostly because of just pure consistency on the charts, and this week's top spot is likely due to snatching the lead on streaming, nothing more. It pushes back Thinking Out Loud by Ed Sheeran to number 3, which is steadily dropping across the board, but is still dominant enough to hold over its slot over Love Me Like You Do by Ellie Goulding at number 4, which really caught fire on radio this week and has always done well in streaming and YouTube. Even though I'm still somewhat underwhelmed by the song, I bet it will do well in the next few weeks. Next up, however, we got 4 or 5 Seconds by Rihanna, Kanye West, and Paul McCartney, which has always had good sales in streaming and even rose a little bit on YouTube this week, that has seemed to slow to a crawl on airplay, which kind of baffles me. You'd think the radio would like the song. Right beneath it, we've got Earned It by The Weeknd, and I'll admit, I'm still baffled how long this song has stuck around. It's here because of sales and streaming, I get that, because it's certainly not getting there on YouTube or airplay, but still, people actually like this song? Apparently it was enough to push back Style by Taylor Swift to number 7, which despite more airplay gains, it did not have a great week in sales, and YouTube continues to underperform. Beneath that, we've got our first of 2 new arrivals to the top 10, Sam Smith's Lay Me Down, which owes its success to sales and streaming, albeit some good YouTube as well, but the radio is barely taking to it, mostly because it's a dreary, depressing ballad. It's probably Sam Smith's best performance on a single to date, I'll give him that, but doesn't really grip me or interest me all that much, I'm sorry. Still, it was enough to keep Pitbull and Neo's Time of Our Lives to number 9, which had good airplay and streams, but not exactly great sales and still no solid YouTube presence to get on that. And now we got a final new arrival, one that genuinely shocks me. Trap Queen by Fetty Wap. Now, when I first covered this song on this show, I mostly treated it as a goofy, lightweight version of trap-flavored hip-hop, but apparently it's somehow gotten enough streaming, sales, and even airplay to land in the top 10. Granted, I'm not complaining, I'm just surprised it caught on this much. I mean, I'll take this over Ray Schrimmer or O.T. Janas's any day, and you know what, I am happy that it's one of those to become successful over those, but still, I'm surprised it got this high. And speaking of losers and dropouts, we don't actually have that many this week. The 3 that I predicted would exit, Like a Cowboy by Randy Houser, Try Me by DJ Loaf, and Sundays by Flora Georgia Line, they were all gone. But then you also lost Love Me Harder by Ariana featuring The Weeknd, which dropped in the charts shockingly fast after it left the top 10. Yeah, it kind of sucks because it was a great song, but it happens. Outside of that, the losers aren't all that surprising either. Kanye's All Day plummets to 51 because it still doesn't have a video. I Really Like You by Carly Rae Jepsen stumbles to 68 because it still hasn't been released to radio yet and hasn't exactly become a viral smash. And Make Me Wanna by Thomas Rhett and The Heart Wants What It Wants by Selena Gomez dropped to 75 and 82 respectively because their songs near the end of their chart lifespan, they'll likely be gone pretty soon. The last 2 songs, they're both from Empire. You're So Beautiful slipping to 70 and Conqueror dropping to 86. But you know what, that's common when it comes to songs from TV. Unless you got a breakout phenomenon and the network capitalizes on it immediately and releases a single to radio, they typically don't exactly stick around. They're just kind of like viral novelties. Now, we didn't get a lot of big gains this week either, and those that we did get, well, remember what I said about surprises? I already talked about Lay Me Down by Sam Smith rocketing up to break the top 10, even though rocketing is not a word that should ever be associated with that song ever. But the big shock for me was the breakout success of Shut Up and Dance Dance by Walk the Moon, hitting number 21. Yeah, I know it's Killer's Light, but it's so rare we get songs with this sort of energy and spark from the indie scene charting. I'm just gonna appreciate it while it lasts, because this is awesome. And the good news kept coming. I Bet by Sierra gains huge off of YouTube to get to 43, and Honey I'm Good by Andy Grammer even gets a boost to 77. Of course, YouTube gains don't just help the good songs, as I Want You to Know by Zedd featuring Selena Gomez stabilized to 24, and Little Red Wagon by Miranda Lambert got a boost to 55. Most alarming for me is the growth of Watch Me by Salento to 76. Folks, did you not listen to me last week? We don't need a song trying to co-opt a half dozen bad dance trends and somehow being worse than all of them. Can we please just consign this to viral novelty status and nothing else? In other words, can we make it go away? But okay, enough of all that. Let's talk about our solitary returning entry. Okay, really? This is back? I'm not exactly complaining. It's one of the songs I actually kind of liked off of Jessie J's Sweet Talker, but unless it got a surprise iTunes discount, there's not exactly an uptick in sales, airplay, or streaming to explain why this song is back. In other words, I don't exactly see this sticking around on the charts. Sorry, Jessie J, you had your comeback hit with Bang Bang, but Masterpiece, I'm sorry, I don't think it's gonna get there. And that's all we got with our returning hits. Now on to our 9 new entries, starting with number 100, See You Again by Wiz Khalifa featuring Charlie Puth. We've come a long way. Okay, you all remember that song Wiz Khalifa did with Iggy Azalea for the Fast and the Furious 7 soundtrack? No? Good, it sucked. But apparently Wiz wanted to take another shot at a soundtrack hit, so he teamed up with YouTuber Charlie Puth for a ballad, and unsurprisingly, it's a hell of a lot better. I've always liked Wiz Khalifa in his more emotive roles, mostly because he can be a surprisingly sincere vocalist. And as a tribute to an old comrade who passed away, with hints of organ to balance out the more aggressive clap beat, and with Puth's more soulful delivery with really good falsetto, the song works pretty well. And Wiz actually seemed to have put a fair amount of effort into his writing, with his haphazard flow and rhyming actually taking a solid turn for the better on the song. Overall, while I do think it could have been a little bit more subdued to match the subject matter, it's a pretty good song nonetheless. I'll take it. Number 99, Little Toy Guns by Carrie Underwood. So, okay, for clarification, this is not the lead-off single for a new album from Carrie Underwood. Neither was her last song, Something in the Water. Both actually turned out to be additional tracks thrown onto her first greatest hits album. And while the whole Come to Jesus vibe of the former track didn't really stick with me, Little Toy Guns is a darker, nastier song that fits much better in her wheelhouse. Most of Carrie Underwood's best songs are when she gets darker or confronts bleaker subject matter, like my personal favorite, Blown Away. And writing from the perspective of a kid caught in the middle between fighting parents, it's a natural fit in terms of subject matter, especially when paired with a pretty aggressive melodic groove that I did like. I do wish the song was a little bit more raw and visceral though, which has always been an issue I've had with Carrie. She captures the broad strokes of the emotion in her vocals, but can have kind of difficulty nailing the subtler, more intense moments. But overall, definitely one of her better songs. I'll take it. Number 98, Diamond Rings and Old Bar Stools by Tim McGraw featuring Catherine Dunn. One's for queens and one's for fools. And here comes the first of 2 songs that I didn't expect to be released as singles from their respective album, mostly because they're shockingly good, but not lead-off single material. But since mainstream country is so desperate for songs because nobody's releasing albums right now, we've now got the 4th single from Tim McGraw's Sundown Heaventown. And you know what? It's easily one of the best songs on the album. In this case, we got a pretty basic neo-traditional country track with some swampy, liquid electric guitars, and a lot of steel guitar too, which I liked. But really, it's the writing that's the star of the song, using a pretty simple dichotomy between the titular objects and then comparisons between them. But the comparisons never actually specify which object they're referring to, which adds a really refreshing layer of moral ambiguity to the song that I actually found really compelling. Now, this is the sort of song that Tim McGraw could knock out in his sleep, and with a pretty basic melodic construction, you could question how much real time and effort really went into writing the instrumentation, but sometimes stripping things back to basics, it works. And this, for me, one of those cases. Check it out. Number 97, Wild Child by Kenny Chesney featuring Grace Potter. that second song, which is on the charts for pretty much all the same reasons that Tim McGraw's is. It's a late album single that's better than it has any right to be, but would probably be a deep cut that would never get airplay outside of situations just like this. Granted, it's not as good as Diamond Rings and Old Bar Stools, mostly because the writing aims a little lower, instead falling to a pretty basic love song for your archetypal hipster dream girl. And sure, it helps that Kenny Chesney is as naturally charismatic as he is, and he did actually get Grace Potter to help a little bit with backing vocals, but the song just rings a little bit inert for me, with kind of limp instrumentation to sketching such a broad picture of this wild child, or such a cliched picture, that building a real connection to her becomes kind of hazy, at least for me. Overall, pleasant enough, but it's not one that would have landed on the charts in the majority of cases, and I don't exactly see this lasting. Number 96, Bright by Echosmith.
La, la, la. You make a girl go.
One of the more perplexing and controversial songs to be released last year in 2014 was Cool Kids by upstart family band Echosmith. And while a lot of people hated that song for playing to the most painfully high school tendencies, I'd argue it was slightly more complicated than them, or at least was trying to be. In reality, that song lyrically was about 3 or 4 drafts from being really good, which is a bit of a shame because the instrumentation was actually really solid. So the follow-up single, Bright, might just be better for simply having simpler ambitions and being a pretty basic acoustic love song with decent enough harmonies that remind me of a less country, more high school the band Perry. It doesn't exactly raise a lot of emotions in me. Echosmith are still too timid and safe of a band to really inspire a lot of passion, but you know what? The song's agreeable and it's pretty enough, so I'll take it. Number 95, Bills by LunchMoney Lewis.
So I'm gonna work every day.
Okay, remember when I said this week was full of surprises? This is probably the biggest one, mostly because I'm having a hell of a time contextualizing who this guy is and why he's on the Hot 100, and he's got less subscribers than I do. Well, okay. This guy has been bubbling around the Miami music scene for a while as a songwriter, following in his family's footsteps because his father and uncle were members of the reggae band Inner Circle, who would eventually write the awesome Bad Boys song. Plus, through a family connection to one of the more important studios in Miami that hosted recordings for Pitbull and Flo Rida that eventually helped him land a song with Nicki Minaj, it's not exactly surprising that this guy might claw together a song, even though he looks and sounds like a cross between CeeLo Green and Biz Markie. And you know what? I mean that as a huge compliment because Bills is a ridiculous amount of fun, with a bouncing retro R&B piano and organ line and synths that add modern texture without being overbearing. It's a weedy yet kind of fun horn interlude, and considering the sad sack persona of LunchMoney Lewis as he struggles to find a way to pay his bills, it's resoundingly charming. I got a funny feeling this song and this guy won't be going away anytime soon. And you know, I think the charts will be better for it. More of LunchMoney Lewis. I like this guy. Number 94, Games by Bryan.
I can't even keep them all straight. Do we mean what we say?
Okay, so full confession time here. I've never actually been on a spring break trip. The closest I ever got to it was the Bacchanal that was spring break, that is the movie Spring Breakers, which, if anything, seemed kind of tame during its party segments. I've seen worse in university house parties, if I'm being honest. But the one thing that I never really heard in that movie was country music. And yet, for some unknown reason, Bryan has been releasing spring break EPs since 2009. And when you remember this guy is in his 30s, it gets, well, kind of creepy. In any case, given that he's now 38 and bro country is effectively sputtered out, he's releasing his final spring break EP, and this is the lead-off single. And I gotta be honest, it's a weird one, and not a particularly good one. For one, the mishmash of styles is jarring as hell. The clipped acoustic guitar sounds like it's been pulled from Cry Let Me a River by Justin Timberlake, the sad piano line, the heavier guitars, the synth line crowbarred into the chorus, and all of it has this frustrated, sour tone that does fit the theme. Trust me, I get it being pissed off at people playing games and relationships, but it might work better if you weren't doing the exact same thing in the first verse, Bryan. Once again, he's not taking the high road or doing anything to really change things, he's just being pissy about it. And I got a limited tolerance for that, a very limited tolerance. If Bryan want to end his spring break era, okay, this song's a way to do it, but probably not ending it in the way that he was hoping. Number 45, Want to Want Me by Jason Derulo.
And if you want me, girl, you got me.
Yeah, I thought we were already done with Jason Derulo's singles. Don't we get a break or a year or something to recuperate? After songs like Wiggle and Trumpets, it'd be good for all of our sanities. Well, Jason Derulo is not waiting around because he's got a new single from another upcoming album, and honestly, it's not that bad. A lot of critics expected Derulo to move more in the direction of slicker, more sexual R&B, like say Bobby Brown or in modern day Trey songs. But with Want to Want Me, he pivots back more towards electropop, and he manages to bring along a pretty damn tight bass and percussion line, which for me was a huge plus. Hell, even the lyrics avoid more of Derulo's characteristic terrible lines, and instead stick with a pretty basic drive for anticipating hot, steamy sex. I just wish Jason Derulo was a more impressive vocalist. His falsetto is a wince-inducing squawk, and while he piles on the overdubs, he doesn't exactly bring a lot of emotional presence and drive to the song. Instead, I'm left in the very same state I was when I heard, say, The Other Side. Just kind of ambivalent to it. Damn good bass line though, so that's one good thing. And finally, number 31, Believe by Mumford & Sons.
I don't even know if I believe. I don't even know if I believe.
Most critics tend to give Mumford & Sons a lot of grief for their overwrought pretensions towards folk rock that lack in grit and texture, to say nothing of lyrics that really stick the landing. And on some level, the band can be a little insufferable, especially considering they're plainly taking it all very seriously. But you know what? At their best, they can write grooves and melodies that are pretty damn impressive and really propulsive. So when I heard the band was dropping a new single for an upcoming album, I was at least curious to hear where they would take their sound. And they certainly found a new sound, and it's not folk rock at all. Ditching the banjo, Mumford & Sons, they have gone electric. And as such, they found a sound somewhere between the National, Imagine Dragons, and mid-period Coldplay. So why the hell am I so underwhelmed by it? Well, maybe it's because the song takes until the second chorus to really kick the guitar up into a snarl, with only percussion and a pretty minimal bass line to drive the groove. Maybe it's because the guitars are placed too far back in the mix to bring real fire to match the drums, or the washed out guitar that provides the faintest hint of background texture and little else, or the fact that lead singer Marcus Mumford doesn't actually spit fire or real power in his delivery or sound like he cares. For once, I actually do like the lyrics on the song. Crisis of faith in a relationship, it's pretty well realized, but it's nowhere near as visceral or gripping as it should be. And if this is where Mumford & Sons are taking their sound, well, okay, I might have reason to be concerned about that next album, because yikes. So yeah, that was our week, and overall, for the most part, the surprise turned out pretty damn good. Not all of them. Games by Luke Bryan easily snags Worst of the Week for being just a total mess, and I'm giving dishonorable mention to Believe by Mumford & Sons for being a lead-off single with no real propulsive energy, which is kind of inexcusable if they're going electric and we're at their best with killer grooves. They should know that. But for Best of the Week, yeah, honorable mention will go to Tim McGraw and Catherine Dunn's Diamond Rings and Old Bar Stools, which leaves Bills by LunchMoney Lewis to snag that top slot. I really hope to hear more from the guy. If the charts behave, he could end up having a very good spring and summer. But that's all to come, because until next week, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown on Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.